Hey guys, so today I'm going to be doing another book review, and this one is going to be on the book Wintergirls. I don't have the book with me because I got it from the library and I had to return it, but the thumbnail will be what the front of the book looks like. So first off, I'm going to start by reading the summary. So I looked online and this was the shortest summary I could find. The rest of them were like 2 pages long, and I didn't think that was really necessary because I will go a little bit into the plot. Leah Overbook has self-esteem issues. She and her best friend Cassie Parrish have both developed eating disorders. Leah succumbs to anorexia and Cassie to bulimia. Their neuroses start feeding off each other, making the relationship toxic. One day, Cassie breaks off their friendship. 6 months later, in the midst of senior year, Leah receives 31 phone calls from Cassie. Leah never picks up. The next day, Leah learns that Cassie died the night before. She had locked herself up in a motel room where the cycle of binging and purging weakened her, eventually causing her death. Leah struggles to come to grip with her friend's death. She cuts herself and spirals into a deep depression, thinking of herself as a winter girl caught between two worlds, neither alive nor dead. In the end, she seeks help for her problems, knowing the healing process will be long and hard. So, first off, I would like to say that I do not think I'm far enough in recovery to absolutely hate this book. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'll try to describe it. So yeah, this is a very controversial book. It is very triggering. I think this book even has the potential to trigger people who don't have an eating disorder. And maybe not to make them have an eating disorder, but just, it can be triggering because there's just a lot of traumatic and dark thoughts. So basically in the book, Leah is kind of haunted by what she believes to be Cassie's ghost. And Leah has this big regret of not picking up any of the phone calls and kind of tells herself that it was her fault that Cassie died. One thing I can really relate to this book is with having two friends who both have eating disorders, and that kind of feeds off of each other. Like I said in my last video, which was the worst thing my eating disorder made me do, I did have some friends who also had eating disorders, and we did collude with each other. And I do think it can ruin friendships. It makes it extremely toxic, and it's just not really good for either of you. One thing I did like about this book is in the book, Leah has repeating thoughts. So it will be like a paragraph of text, and then in the middle of the page, it will have like numbers counting up to 31, which is how many phone calls she received. And this happens like 5 times with like 5 different other thoughts, and it just kind of goes through each chapter, and she has these repeating thoughts to keep telling her that it was her fault. Now, the reason this book can be triggering is because it talks about a lot of behaviors, and I just want to put out here, this part can be kind of triggering. So if you are in a rough spot right now, I recommend just skipping this part of the video or just not even watching it in general. Whatever you think is best for you. So like I said in the summary, Cassie is bulimic and Leah is anorexic. Cassie never gets help for her eating disorder. She got really close to getting help with Leah's advice, but it never actually happened. So if you guys have seen To the Bone, they kind of have this running joke that the main character Ellen has calorie Asperger's. I definitely think if that was an actual thing that Leah would have that, because after everything she eats, she says how many calories are in it. She's kind of just like a walking calorie dictionary. And I think this is very common in the restrictive eating disorder world. I know at my treatment center, a lot of people didn't understand why they hid the calories from us. A lot of us knew how many calories were in the stuff anyway. So yeah, Leah talks a lot about calories. She talks a lot about hiding food, using food rituals at the table. She water loads whenever she gets weighed by her stepmother. And she also tinkers with the scale to make it look like she's heavier than she really is. Another thing I like about this book is just the fact that it was Cassie who died instead of Leah. I know that sounds kind of morbid, but what I mean by that is most books and just like most people's perception of eating disorders, they think that you can't really die of bulimia and that it's not as dangerous as anorexia, but they are both extremely dangerous. So Leah refers to a lot of things as fat and not just herself and not just other people. And I think in my eating disorder specifically, I do have that judgmental thing. It's kind of always on my mind, just like the word fat. So that's just how I describe a lot of things, even if it's not like a person or like myself. I've noticed other people who have bad body image do this, like Shane Dawson. He calls a lot of things fat, and I don't think he means to. It's just like, sometimes when you have bad body image issues and you think you're fat, that's kind of like a big thing that's on your mind. So I think this book is a very accurate representation of what it is like to have an eating disorder. I myself was not very triggered by it. I do not think it glorifies eating disorders. I think it very much states that eating disorders are an awful thing to have and never something that you should wish to have. So I'd say people who are more in recovery would not like this book just because of how wrong her thoughts are. But, I'm recovered, like weight-wise. But, I do think that I still have a lot of eating disorder thoughts. I am still concerned with calories. I still avoid fear foods. And I just think that when you're still in that mindset, it can be validating to know that someone else has those same thoughts. But I think it can also have the potential to trigger people to have more of those thoughts. Are aware that you are developing an eating disorder or have disordered eating, I do not recommend reading this book simply because it shares a lot of behaviors. I'm pretty sure there were some I've never even heard of, and it doesn't share them like tips and tricks. It doesn't say like, oh, like you should do this and stuff, but it's definitely like giving the idea in the person's head that, oh, this is a good way to avoid food, this is a good way to not eat and stuff like that. So yes, I do think this book was realistic. Do I recommend anyone to read it? I don't really think so. If you're not going to be triggered by it, you could, but I don't know. It is really beautifully written, so you could read it for the literature aspect, but I do think the plot is potentially triggering to basically anyone. So that is my thoughts on the book Wintergirls. I will also be doing another book review on the book Sad Perfect. Okay guys, thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.